Hey guys, I'm Mark. Today, I'm going to show you how I made filming in my shop a lot easier by building this camera boom arm. This project utilizes a big metal post that runs from floor to ceiling in the middle of my shop and has a big metal arm that rotates in 360 degrees around it. From the end of that metal arm, I mounted 4 parallel arms that support a platform and a vertical post that actually holds the camera itself. When all of these parts are combined, I have 3 different points that can rotate 360 degrees. I have a horizontal movement of about 3 feet, and I have a vertical movement of about 3.5 feet. So I can completely ditch the tripod in this shot because this takes care of everything. Stick around if you want to see how I made it. The first thing I had to do was build a jig that would help me drill holes in the metal boom arm that were perfectly parallel to the floor, both side to side and front to back. So I cut up some scrap pieces of plywood and screwed them together to make a C-shaped jig that fits snugly over the boom arm. Then I drilled all the way through the jig so that I would have a hole on each side that was perfectly in line and parallel to the top. So, little pro tip here. Because you don't want a bunch of metal shards falling down onto your nice workbench and then have yourself walking around on it and embed it into the wood, just start with a clean surface and then put something down to try to catch all that stuff that's about to come raining down on the bench. So now that we have our jig made, we can throw it up on here and get it locked down and kind of fine-tune the position that it's going to be. And I want it pretty close to the end, but not so close that this hole gets messed with. But we've got it on there, and I can tell very plain as day that this arm slopes downhill this way. We'll throw the level on there, and clearly it's pretty sloped. So we have to lift up that far end till it's level, so that when we make the arms come down and then the next platform, that stays level with the world too. So, we did get this leveled out. That's real nice. But, if you look close, because this had to come up so far, our holes are now really close to the top edge of that pipe that we're trying to drill through. So I'm going to have to take this back down quick like and drill a second set of holes further down on this board. Well, if you saw my last video, I made a lathe tool storage organizer thing, and I made a bunch of these walnut strips with the rounded over edge to stick in and divide up the tools, and I left a flat bottom on them so you could stick them down to the board. I have 4 extra ones, and I'm going to use these for the parallel arms for this little device. So I'm just going to run it through the router table really quick like and round over the last side so that it's nice and rounded on both sides. I matched up the ends of the parallel arms, then used some blue tape to hold them together. This allowed me to drill holes through all of them at once. Then I used the bandsaw to put a rough round shape on one end, then used the belt sander to fine-tune it. I drilled holes through the sides of what will become the floating platform with the exact same spacing as the holes in the metal tubing. This is important to keeping the parallel arms all lined up and the action working smoothly. Next, it was time for a test run, so I hung the arms from the boom arm and loosely tightened the hardware. So I put the first platform in and just put the bolts through it to hold it there and check that everything is square with the world. And if we put the level on there, it's actually really darn close to being level. I can actually cheat it just with the slop from the bolt holes. And then throughout my range of motion, I can actually keep it level, which is exactly what we were going for. After taking a few measurements, I pulled the floating platform down and drilled a few more holes in it. These will be for the vertical adjustment post and locking knob. I needed to make a flat recess inside the post hole that would hold a T-nut without interfering with the up and down action of the post. So I made 2 shallow cuts, then used a chisel to clear out the material in between. The vertical adjustment post is just a 1-inch round dowel that will slide up and down. Since my camera will be hanging from this, I wanted to make sure that it had a fail-safe stop. This way, if the locking knob isn't tight and the post slides down on its own, it can only go so far and won't end up smashing my camera into a bunch of little pieces on my concrete floor. I added paste wax to the post and to the inside of the hole to help everything slide a little better without binding up.
Boom.
Using another chunk cut from the same piece of black walnut as the floating platform, I made a foot that the tripod head and camera will sit on. I wanted to use a dowel to pin the vertical post and the foot together. In order to make sure everything was lined up right, I just put the post in the pocket of the foot and drilled a hole through both parts at the same time. There's no real reason why this project would need to be nicely sanded and well finished, but it seems like a shame to do anything with black walnut and not allow it to look its best. So I disassembled the whole thing and gave all the parts a quick sanding. Then I wiped down a tung oil finish and left it to sit overnight before putting it all back together. So my ultimate goal here is to buy a new ball head that actually takes the same RC2 Manfrotto plates as my pivoting head here that's going to go on top of the lathe, and then my tripod head that's the camera sitting on, so you can't see it right now. But that way, if I need to move my camera from one to the other, I can just flip a lever and drop it in, as opposed to having to mess with putting on different plates or threads or whatever. I haven't got one bought yet, so at this point, I've got this much smaller sort of ball head that's just got the 1/4-20 in the bottom of it. But with the ball head there like that, that gives me a whole lot more range of motion and the ability to level the camera. Alright guys, just a few last points I want to make about this. First of all, I left the arms up at the top just a little bit long because that's how long these were when I started working on them. And I thought, there's no reason to cut it off now. I made sure that they're not going to hit anything that's hanging from my ceiling. And this way I have enough material that if I decide I need this to come down a little bit more, you know, I could move the pivot holes up about 3 more inches and gain myself a little bit more range of motion that way. I started where it is because I wanted it to be at its lowest point. No way for me to hit my head on it. Coming down from there, I left this piece a little bit extra long because I wasn't sure where I needed this hole to come through, and that gave me extra space to put more holes for the shaft to slide through if I decide I need it. In addition to that, I think I'm going to make some sort of light panel, and I was thinking this would be a really good place to clamp it on or bolt it in, maybe using the same ball head so I can aim it a little bit. I don't know how that's going to work yet, but that's why I left the material there. Now also, I'm planning on gluing this bottom foot onto the shaft, gluing the pin in place, and then cutting it and sanding it flush. But I figured at this point, since it's still sort of an experiment, there's no reason to make that permanent, because if I glue that in and decide I don't like something, I've pretty much got to throw the whole part away and start over. This way I can drive that pin out, put on a new foot, put in a longer shaft. I've got a lot of options that way. That's really about all I wanted to say about it for now. I'm sure I'm going to make some tweaks, but I am just thrilled with how it's working so far. I think it's going to make filming project a whole lot more efficient because I waste a lot of time lowering those legs and extending those legs on that tripod. So I realize not everybody has a giant metal pole with a big metal boom arm in the middle of their shop, so this might not apply to too many of you, but it's still kind of cool construction, and I just figured a lot of you would like the simplicity of how easy it is, how short of a project it was to make, but just how much of a game changer it is for this style for anybody who's filming in the workshop. Well, I want to thank everybody for checking this out. This was a fun project to make, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Please go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you did. If you're not a subscriber yet, go ahead and subscribe to the channel because there's going to be a lot more stuff like this coming out. And also I have an Instagram page where I do sort of little updates of all these little things going on. So go ahead and check that out too. I'll leave the link around here somewhere. And that's really about it. So thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.